I'm Mike Dowdy, and this is the School Leadership Show. Welcome to the only podcast dedicated to helping practicing and aspiring school leaders realize their potential, advance their careers, and achieve work-life balance. The School Leadership Show brings together the greatest minds from inside and outside of education to deliver you the insights and tools you need to succeed in school leadership. This is the show we wish we had 20 years ago. This show is about you. We're here to help you become the best school leader you can be while still having a life outside of work. Today's episode is brought to you by Focus at Will. As school administrators, our lives are all about distractions. If you need help maximizing your concentration and attention, try the specially designed streaming audio from Focus at Will. Neuroscience actually works. Learn more at focusatwill.com or look for their app. Focus at Will, music scientifically optimized to boost concentration and attention. If you're like me, you probably get a lot of email, hundreds of them a day, and it's one of the worst parts of your job. If email is the best part of your job, then you need a new job. In this episode, Dr. Jeff Kimmer and I talk about all things email, its history, how people use and misuse it, strategies for managing it, and much more. While email isn't one of those things that's likely to make your career, using email inappropriately could send you into obscurity, or worse, unemployment. You can get control of your email in a positive way and spend more time with your friends and family. It's time to stop letting this tool control your life. Now, enjoy this interview with Dr. Jeff Kimmer. I'm here with Dr. Jeff Kimmer, making his third trip back to the School Leadership Show podcast. Welcome.
Great to be back, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Did you bring a thermos?
I did bring a thermos of coffee.
Wow, you're in it for the long haul, huh?
When your best girl makes you a thermos of coffee, be sure to drink it.
There it is. So you now hold the record of having the most appearances on this podcast so far.
Well,
you're one ahead of Kim Marshall.
I will tell you, it makes you think and love to be on top of things. So appreciate the invitation.
So today's topic is email. And how did we decide we wanted to talk about this? Something made us mad.
Well, like our previous presentation on watching presentations that are painful, I think email is the new devil, if it's not the devil already. It is just such a part of our lives and our audience, whether that's customers if you're in private sector or in public sector, it's different clients. So it's just everything we do seems to be email these days.
How many emails do you figure you get in a day?
Well, it's an interesting question. When I was a director of technology last year, I was getting about 150 a day, give or take. That's crazy if you think about that. If you think that in comparison to snail mail, that's a lot of mail. Nowadays, I'm getting closer to 100.
Okay. And I'm probably right around there, too, 100-ish. Now, yeah, because in the old days, like in the 60s, they didn't get 150 memos every day.
I'm thinking not.
Oh, God. All right, so we're going to... You want to talk about the history of email?
I do, and we were poking around on the super web and came up with some super statistics. It's kind of interesting. I don't know about you, but I reflect, and after doing some research and looking at timelines, the first interaction I had with email was around the late 80s. Buffalo State College, they issued these email accounts, and we had no idea what to do with them. Basically on a token ring network on campus, and we're supposed to talk with one another or talk with professors. Beyond freshman orientation, I don't think we ever used email again.
See, and I think we got ours. I remember getting it in college in the early 90s, like 94, 95. And then I remember in my first teaching job, I don't know if I had it my first year as a teacher, email in 1996 or shortly thereafter.
Well, begs the question you started with, then what happened? Because how did it come from we survived in college academia environments and probably in private sector without it, and all of a sudden it's so pervasive in everything we do?
Yeah, looking at this timeline, and we did a Google search, and a fella named Glenn Fleischman developed this little infographic on a short history of email. So if you search that, you can find it. But he's claiming that the first email was in 1971, and then he finishes up, and by 2012, he's claiming that in the United States, 90 million Americans access email through a mobile device, with 64% doing so on a near daily basis.
It's impressive. And I think he went on to invent margarine.
He may have.
Maybe.
Well, lots of misinformation out here. Yeah. So, McKinsey Global Institute did a study in 2012. Now, think about that. So that's 3 years ago. So you know how fast things change, Moore's Law and all that. And they found that on average, office workers spend 2.6 hours per day doing email.
So there's a couple things.
Almost 30% of their day.
Looking at that same set of results using that Google search, I'm kind of answering my own question of two things. What brought it to fruition in the 90s? It looks like two answers: that people had received their own internet service provider, which probably made personal email more user-friendly and more accessible. And then probably that other branch in the tree would be, what type of email were people doing in private and public sector? So that's another good conversation we can have. Private email versus professional email.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton might have something to say about that.
Word.
All right. So my thing with email is, when did it become instant messaging? Because I feel like that's the scourge. I work with some folks, or I have colleagues, not necessarily that I work with currently, but colleagues and folks that I know who can't tolerate unread email messages on their mobile device and check it obsessively and expect immediate responses. So how do you think we got to this instant messaging as email kind of thing?
As I reflect, I would blame it on personal devices. I mean, it seems like we're wearing phones, and as phones get larger, going the wrong way, it feels like we're wearing tablets on our hips. But it seems like with that anywhere, anytime access, that email became instant messaging. And I know some of the younger generations probably use social media in a proper way, but email for certain generations have become the new pager, have become the new instant messaging, which is bizarre. And I don't think that's the way Fleischman designed it to be in 71?
No, it was Ray Tomlinson in 1971.
Where did
Fleischman wrote the article.
Thank you.
Would you please pay attention?
I'm sorry. I got caught up on margarine.
So, all right. So it's become instant messaging. I feel like we do that to ourselves by setting that expectation. If you respond immediately to somebody's email at any time of the day or night, I feel like you're conditioning that person to expect that you will respond immediately. Whereas I've gotten to the point where I try to wait 24 hours, and folks know now that if they need me immediately, they pick up the phone and call. That email is not for an immediate response.
So it's probably two things. It's probably what you're going to self-teach, meaning how disciplined are you going to be when you're going to carve out an hour or 2 hours a day. And I'm hoping is what people do is, instead of anywhere, anytime email, if people are carving out time so they can focus, and I'm sometimes suspect of that, of not focusing, then you're reading those 100 to 150 email messages and halfway responding, which is not only inconsiderate, but it's unprofessional. And then not only carving out that time, but being able to discern what's important during the day, because it seems for some, anytime a message comes in, that's the most important thing in their world right now. And I would have to challenge if that's really the case.
Well, you mentioned distraction, and in 2013, Harris Interactive did a study. They found that 20% of people they surveyed said that email was their biggest distraction during the day. 79% of them said that they waste time checking email. So I think that goes to your point. And, it's the whole idea, David Allen talks about it in Getting Things Done. A lot of people say that if you have to get stuff off of your mind so that you're not distracted. So if you're just flipping through those emails and you don't act on it at the time you're looking at it, then it might be in the back of your mind. Then you have to touch it twice. So this idea, you kind of got into it a little bit there with batching, and I put it on my calendar. I check email at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day. And that, if I'm standing in line somewhere, I might flip through and delete random things. But in terms of actually acting on email, I do it twice a day. What do you do?
It's a few more times than twice a day, so I'm slowly getting better because I will self-reflect and say that I was one of the persons, probably like your listeners, that would check it every hour. And then you're caught in a set of directions that you're bouncing yourself into, kind of like a pinball in a pinball machine of reaction, reaction, reaction. I'm usually getting to work very early these days. I'm an early riser, and email between 7 and 8 seems to be a nice sweet spot because I can focus. No one's knocking at the door quite yet, and I have found middle of the day, as I've been eating lunch more and more, trying to eat lunch healthier, by the way, but at my desk and trying to do the noon hour, and then once again at the end of the day, usually between 3 and 5. But I really am trying to keep it in a hidden view or closed out completely so that I can focus on some real work. Because as you pointed out, email can be distracting, and it can be used as an excuse from getting at the deeper thinking and the more conceptual that we're paid to think about.
I'm glad you brought that up. So turn off the email alerts. If you get nothing else out of this podcast, you should probably pause it right now. Pause the podcast and go turn off the alerts on your computer. So I remember there was a time when if I got an email, my phone would vibrate and ding, my computer would ding and something would pop up, and then the iPad in my bag would make a sound.
I participated in one of your workshops this past summer at DayTag for data coordinators in New York State, and that was one of the many takeaways I had from your presentation is turn off the notifications. I know it's counterintuitive, and it's hard. It's like giving up caffeine. You're going to go through withdrawal. And once I got through that withdrawal period, I got to tell you, it's refreshing, and you feel like you've been exonerated from some kind of electronic slave mechanism. But no more dings, no more red flags, no more buzzers. And I watch people around me at meetings, and their phones are vibrating, the table's vibrating, and there's still audio alarms going off in 2015, 2016. I can't believe that. But your advice in that presentation was so helpful, and it allows you to think about the task at hand rather than being reactionary to most of the time garbage emails, which I think we're going to talk about in today's podcast.
And there's a lot of research out there too that shows that if you have two people talking, as soon as the phones come out, even if they're just sitting on the table, it gets in the way of the conversation and the connection between the two people. So I have one of our principals, actually he and his assistant principals they made an agreement among themselves to leave their phones in their offices all day. So if somebody needs them, they call them on the walkie-talkie or page them over the PA, whatever, but their phones are in their offices. And if they need to use their phone, they go into their office and close the door. And almost immediately, they started getting positive feedback and reactions from staff saying, wow, you're so present, you're at meetings on time, things like that, where before that, dopamine-inducing device would, distract them from everything. So I'm not quite there yet. I've tried to leave it in my office a few times, but I don't know. I don't carry a walkie-talkie, so I don't have another way.
That little state's really good modeling. Matter of fact, our office team back in our school district has done the same thing. We've been encouraged by our superintendent and assistant superintendents to turn off the phone or flip it over during the meeting, that if something's really critically happening around us or something really critical, that someone will get a hold of us like they have in the past, and that allows us to stay on stage and minds on and really keeping with the task at hand. And that's helped. It really has.
So turn off the email alerts. So let's talk about some other ways that you manage email. What else? So we talked about batching it, so doing it at certain times of the day, turning off the alerts. What else do you do to manage it?
I try to put it in folders, although I'm starting to move away from that. I was really into folder management, and it was primarily for finding things. Being an ex-library media specialist, you always wanted to be able to index and find things. But I find myself not worrying about that too much, and basically, if I've read it, I'm going to it's a yes or no answer, whereas before it was 20 different answers is where I'm going to store it, and that is either toss it, and it's really refreshing to be able to throw out things. And the other part of it is if I'm going to save it, I usually keep it in a general folder just called Chief Information Officer, knowing that the search engines in email these days are very robust, and if I need to find it later, we'll find it. And I also know that our school district backs up our email for up to 7 years. So when it comes to retention, if there's anything that needs to hang around for more than 7 years, that we're covered with back end stuff, and I'm not having to worry and waste time about putting it in 20 different folders.
It's a huge waste of time. Stop putting it in folders, and you'll find it liberating. Now, some people can let it live in their inbox in perpetuity. I can't, because I need it sort of cleaned out. So I put it in, kind of like you, I put it in a folder that says read, like READ. I read it. If I feel like I want to be able to search it later, that's where it goes. And yeah, keyword search, it's so robust these days that there's no need to put things in folders. Total waste of time. Go.
Yeah, when I think about what you just said, there's in that 3 different windows of opportunity for cleaning out my email box, I think it's not only practical to get it out of the inbox and put it in the either trash or red folder, but it's also healthy from a psychological perspective, because if you're staring at 150 email messages at the end of the day, you're going to feel that you've missed something or you're not doing your job, and that's where the anxiety and the stress is going to come in. I think the more you can keep the inbox clean and really have it filed away into one of those respective folders, read or thrown out, the healthier your mind will be.
Right, because it lets you focus on the task at hand versus the million emails that you think you have to deal with. Have you ever messed with some people call it the yester box technique? I know in Outlook, because that's what we use, there's the little carrots next to today, yesterday, last week, or whatever, and you can close it off so you can hide today, and then you're only looking at yesterday. So I've tried to use that to kind of get myself in the habit of putting 24 hours in there for the response time, so that I close off today. I don't even look at it. And like you said, if it's something really important, somebody's going to call me or send me a text message. And then today I work on yesterday's email and get that done. Then tomorrow I work on today's.
I think I've been doing a poor man's version of that, meaning that I've tried to work with my staff, both my present staff and staff that I've had years back, and explain to them that email is probably going to get about a 24-hour response because of my 3 windows of opportunity. And I have found that I'm not looking at it at night, by the way, as a side note, that you keep work at work within reason, but when you're home, you spend it with loved ones. Very important. But providing for your employees that if it is an emergency, we do have cell phones. Everyone has a cell phone or a personal device. Call me on the cell phone. And texting. We talked about earlier the timeline of the way email has been laid and rolled out since the early 70s. And you think about pagers, texting is really the way that we should be instantaneously reaching out as professionals. In our personal life, there's social media, and I'm not the world's greatest social media user. I'm not into Snapchat. I'm not into Twitter. Do use Facebook, but definitely have trained those around me, and even in my personal life, as to how to reach me when it's an emergency, how to get some instantaneous feedback, but also if you're going to send me an email message, it may take up to 24 hours.
Yeah, and I found that technique seems to work. I don't know, do other email programs do that? I'm not familiar with the other ones. I don't think you can do it on Gmail and hide today.
No, I think you're forward thinking on this one. I would love to hear from our listeners, but I think you're a little bit ahead of the curve on this one.
So, all right. So how about this is where I think we may diverge here. So there's different schools of thought on the actual purpose of email. You said probably should try to get away from being text messaging, but at the same time, is it meant for short, quick response type things? So in other words, should you aim to keep your responses as short as possible, or should you try to move it more toward replacing the paper memo? So it might be a little bit more formal of a communication, but I don't know, because I'm kind of going back and forth, because sometimes I in order to be efficient, I have probably 5 canned responses that I use on email. Yes, no, call me, or come see me. And usually those 4 kill just about any email, because if it's really important, somebody will call or come see me. But chances are, if they just fired off some random email and I say come see me, it's probably not important enough in their mind to actually come see me.
So I'll be very interested to hear what you have to say, but the purpose of email for me, however we're going to define it, never exceeds 3 paragraphs. I mean, if I'm writing more than a couple sentences, I'm getting a little sweaty. I love your response around yes, no, maybe, and call me. Of those 4, I love the response of please call me. And please call me is really the one that warrants a phone conversation, or more specifically a face-to-face conversation. I think email in its purest form should be a matter of documentation. It's something that you want to get in a few sentences, or write down in a few paragraphs, and it could be evaluative maybe, but more of just like a follow-up item.
You can hear the water pouring.
Yes. But it's never meant to be. And early in my tenure, I fell into this trap of making it a conversation that you're supposed to have face to face. We still are a people business, even though IT surrounds us. So if you're finding that you're putting 3, 4, 5 paragraphs together in an email, I really have to question, what are you doing, and should you be talking with that individual on a phone or face to face to really have more of a conversation? Nothing makes me cringe more than to receive those lengthy email messages, short of some sales messages from email.
There.
We'll get there, I'm sure, but length is not strength in email.
I know a principal who his rule is, if the email exchange gets beyond 3 or 4 back and forths, it's an automatic phone call. And if you think about it, a conversation over email is so inefficient, where it might, takes me time to go back and read what was said before, and then I got to respond. Much easier, pick up the phone and call. Now, I think you also have to be sensitive to the culture of your organization, because a response like yes or no, and that's it, that might not fly everywhere. The culture in your organization might be a little more formal or a little more personal, where it needs to be, "Dear Jeff, how's everything going today?" Then you ask your question, "Sincerely, Mike," versus just ask the question. What do you think about that?
I completely agree, and I know we're probably going to get into subject headings and salutations in this short podcast as well, but I love the idea of minimizing the threaded discussion. I mean, lately I have watched and chose not to participate in a dozen people trying to provide feedback on a project when there's other better products like OneNote or some kind of Google Doc or Microsoft Word with format changes. But email, I don't think, was ever meant to be a threaded discussion or a discussion room. And some people turn it into that, and I have to agree, it is the most inefficient way to parse through information, especially if it's critical information.
I'm trying to move more toward the paper memo kind of thing. Like, it's a replacement for that. The other thing that I worry about too is the more you put in email, the more opportunities there are to make mistakes or to put something in there that's not appropriate, and it's all discoverable in the event of a notice of claim or a lawsuit. So whatever's in email, there's a pretty good chance that other people might see it someday.
It's a side note, but it's an important side note that if you're putting HIPAA protected, that's in simple language for schools, some health related information, or FERPA protected information, which is really student and family type information beyond directory information that's protected, I agree that it can be so easily forwarded to the wrong hands and sent and distributed en masse that could really hurt you as a professional. And I got to tell you, folks, I know some of you feel really good about putting that disclaimer at the bottom of your email that says confidential, destroy if you accidentally receive this. I don't think that buys you anything. If it makes you feel good, that's great. I know the Pellegrino water right now is making me feel good, but the disclaimer at the bottom doesn't buy anything. I'm just saying.
No, I could not agree more. And I think there's that whole legal aspect of it, but there's also the aspect of just the whole embarrassment thing. I've seen teachers before, a team of teachers going around and around and back and forth, with a parent about scheduling a conference or whatever, and then one of the teachers gets frustrated, replies all with some snarky comment about the parent, and it goes to the parent. So now you've got a huge mess, a dumpster fire that how are you going to put it out?
You started talking about the purpose and really distilling it down to a memo type communication that avoids sensitive information. I agree with that completely. And in like a memo, at least the way I was taught in the 80s how to write a memo, is you have a consistent header. So you have, who it's to and what the subject area is with a real professional subject heading. And then you have a couple of block paragraphs. It goes back to that three of maybe it's an introduction, maybe it's the meat of the conversation, and some kind of a finishing comment. I think if people kept professional email to that memo style as you described, I think that's probably one of the smartest ways to use email, and keeping in mind that it's not going to be instantaneous feedback, that if you send a memo to someone, it may take some time to process, or if there are takeaways, it may take some time to accommodate those takeaways on their end.
So, and the bottom line is, don't be stupid on email. If it's not something that you would say to someone's face, or that you would be comfortable having someone read on a blog or in the newspaper, you shouldn't be writing it.
And I would say, along with salutations and saying stupid things or acting in a stupid way, a lot of that is perceptual. And I would say that text messaging, I think it's a general norm, or it's generally accepted that proper grammar, proper spelling, and you don't need a hello and goodbye at the end. And text messaging is meant for that, so stay with that. But for email messages, nothing drives me probably crazier. I don't know if it's the craziest, but people that aren't doing some kind of an introduction and aren't doing some kind of salutation at the end. It's the short blurbs, the short chunks. It makes it cold and insensitive, even if they're trying not to be cold and insensitive. If you're used to people writing with a hello or good morning and thanks or best, I think if you're going to make it that memo style, add the salutations. It makes it look professional. It makes you look human, because so many emotions can be misconstrued in email.
I'm guilty of that. I'm a no salutation and no closing kind of guy.
And you're a nice guy too, so what the heck?
So some would say. So you mentioned before you're not doing email, or trying not to do email at home anymore. I remember when I first made the move from the building level to central office, and that's when the emails really started to kick up for me. And I remember I went for probably about a year where a couple times a week I would stay up as long as it took to clean out my inbox. So that might be 2 nights a week, maybe 11:30, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. But you know what? I got through it and it was empty. And then what happened? I wake up in the morning and what? It's full back up because people have responded. So a couple of things there. You're setting the expectation that you're going to check email at all hours. It's not healthy, and it was just ridiculous. Now, I don't do that anymore, partly because of the batching and all that stuff. But there is, many different email programs. If you do need to do that, like if you're the kind of person where you got to clean stuff out and you want to still buy yourself some time, you can schedule. Some of the programs like Outlook will allow you to schedule the delivery of the email in the future. So if you're blowing through emails at 5 o'clock at night or whatever, right before you go home, and if you send those immediately, then chances are people might respond right away, and then you haven't gained anything. Whereas if you set it up so that the email is going to be delivered tomorrow morning at 10, that gives you, puts a little margin in there. What do you think about that?
Well, it is a school leadership show, correct?
Yes.
So we are paid, in my opinion, to talk and make decisions, and not necessarily in that order. And I don't think we're paid outright just to do email. So your point's well taken about when you go home, find that balance of friends and family. And here's a news flash. The email, it still will be there in the morning. And what I have found is that when you're up at 9 o'clock at night and you're not with family or friends, more of family, you're thinking about work, and it's going to affect your sleep, and it's absolutely something that can wait until 7 o'clock the next morning, because business usually isn't taken care of at 11, 12, or 1 o'clock in the morning. It goes back to disruption of not only workflow, but it gets into the disruption of your personal life. It can be really disastrous if you have a young family, if you have a family, if you have a loved one. The email can be, it's like an addiction. It can be absolutely disruptive, and it can be corruptive as well.
Another strategy, too, that I know folks have found effective, particularly, if part of your job involves getting into classrooms, and I would argue that every single school administrator in a district ought to be spending as much time in classrooms as he or she can. HR, business office, whatever. You need to get out there and see, why we do our jobs so that the work can happen in classrooms. And what I've done sometimes, like if I have some computer work to do, whether it's email, I'm working on a presentation, whatever. Sometimes, and now everything's mobile, so sometimes I'll take my laptop and I'll go to a teacher's classroom and say, hey, I got some computer work I got to do. Do you mind if I sit in the back of your classroom and do it? And it's not an observation or anything, and I'm not here to watch you or whatever. I just got stuff to do, and I'd rather not be in my office. So a couple things happen there. Let you get your work done, let you get in classrooms so people see you, and it helps with, believe it or not, you got a man or a woman in a suit sitting in the back of the classroom. The kids are probably going to behave a little bit better. Yeah. It helps everybody. Have you ever messed around with that?
Yeah, I'm trying to. When I used to do observations, and I really haven't done them in the last 3 or 4 years with the new APPR plan. But when you bring a laptop into a classroom, you're sitting in the back, and my goodness, if God help you, if you're starting to get distracted and do email, it could be the death of you. It'll totally destroy your credibility, and really, again, it goes back to being on stage or focusing at the task at hand. That you can't be distracted. Pay attention to what you're doing. We've said it 3 times. It's a real challenge with these instantaneous instant-on devices.
But definitely changing your seat, getting to a different place. I mean, you got to do the work anyway, so what difference does it make where you're sitting? If you can focus on some laptop work in the back of a classroom or, in the cafeteria. I've done that before, where I take the laptop into the cafeteria and I just hang out and do the work there. Doesn't matter where you do it.
So you talk about where you're being seen visibly doing work at the workplace. Another thing that drives me crazy, and I know it probably can be symbolic or seen as someone that really cares and they're working super hard, but those people sending email messages on a Sunday, we all get sick, we all get ill, we all have to play catch up sometimes, but the people that are routinely writing to you in a professional venue on a Sunday morning or a Sunday afternoon, I mean, there's not anything holy anymore. I say that, I laugh out of nervousness because, I think that we all put in 40-plus hour work weeks, and isn't enough happening in the 5 to 6 days if you count Saturday. I would say not only chunking, as you described, Mike, those 2 or 3 times a day when you're going to do email, but if you're doing email and it's school email or work email on a Sunday, you really need to think twice about where you are in life. I learned that the hard way.
I agree, and I was guilty of that too. Now I don't do it. I leave my laptop, try to leave my work laptop at work, and and I think part of it too is how we can't control what other people do. All we can control is how we respond. So I can't control if you're sending me emails on Sunday, but you know what? I can control when I respond, and I'm probably not going to respond until the afternoon on Monday. Go ahead.
I liken staying away from email on Sundays, not to be mean, but I liken it to the whole summer break thing. I mean, I think there's the whole agriculture and growing of the 1800s as to why we have summers off. I think that's the history of why summers are off. But nowadays, I see summer, especially for teachers, a little bit of administrators, as a healing time or a healing process. I see Sundays and maybe even Saturdays as a healing process of, let's stop on Fridays, let's go and find that balance between work and family and friends, and then hit it back on Monday. I think it gives everyone a time to reset and to refocus and to rethink. The constant barrage of 7-day-a-week email, I don't think that's mentally healthy. And I have done a study, and that probably isn't scientific. That's more of the art of what we're doing, is let your employees chill out for a day or two. They might appreciate you a little bit more.
Well, and ultimately, I would defy you to come up with a curriculum emergency that requires immediate attention on the weekend. Now, that's not saying that there aren't catastrophes and things that are urgent that happen in schools on the weekends. Certainly, but those are few and far between. I mean, there's no reason why we have to talk about the algebra curriculum on a Sunday afternoon. Yes. And I think that's part of this. We're not trauma surgeons. Nobody's holding somebody's kidney in their hand. So, I think we need to be realistic about how important our jobs are. Not saying they're not important, but they're not so important that you can't take 2 days off a week.
Maybe I'll coin this phrase unless it's been coined already. If everything's a crisis, then nothing is a crisis. I mean, it really, you make a great point. That is, if stuff does happen on a Sunday, and we do have to play catch up once in a while. But if we're doing business on the weekends or late at night, I'm not sure that's best for you or for your employees from a mental health perspective.
So let's transition a little bit and let's talk about the types of emails that we get. And this is where I'm gonna let you rant a little bit about, because this is sort of what got us into this. We were forwarding back and forth over the last couple of weeks some just horrible emails that we had received, mostly from vendors soliciting, our attention to buy something.
Well, I appreciate and let me rant. I thought this whole thing was a rant, but I know we have some followers on LinkedIn, maybe Facebook, folks throughout the country as your audience grows. But I got to tell you, folks, the first subject headings. Subject headings have become goofy. They continue to grow, and as you heard me say before, I was a library media specialist in a prior life. Subject headings are supposed to be condensed and be on target and really focus on the meaning or purpose. And now I'm seeing symbols and lengthy sentences, if not multiple sentences in the subject heading, short of flashing lights and emojis. I gotta tell you, as a professional, if I'm receiving that, especially from a sales world, take note that I'm instantaneously deleting those messages. And you're making it easier for me to parse that email box once or twice or 3 times a day. I will not, Mike, read an email message that has anything more than a couple of words in the subject headings, unless it's from my supervisor or someone that I know. But sales team stuff, throwing it out immediately. I do not understand why you have to have emojis and multiple sentences in a subject heading.
Yes, get it out of there. And I'm not going to read it. When was the last time one of those big long emails resulted in you either contacting a vendor or purchasing something?
And then the second thing with private sector is the sales pitch, because there's nothing worse in person than a cold call. But then you receive the email message. If you got past me with the subject heading that's brief, concise, on target, and then the first sentence of your email is, "Hey buddy," or "Hi friend," or "Hey, how's it going?" If it comes all of a sudden really friendly and I've never heard of you before, that's the second filter. It's instantaneously going in the trash. I will not read past the first sentence for those sales folks that think they're my best friend when I have never met them. I'm sure those are vetted boilerplate email messages that comes from corporate and marketing. It doesn't work. You're not my friend. I'm not going to read your stuff.
I would say I agree completely. One of the things that I have found is that the ones I will look at, like if I'm at a conference and I'm on the vendor floor, the trade show floor, and I'm having a conversation with somebody, and I hand them my card and I say, "Send me an email." That does mean I'm interested, and that means I want to hear from you. Those I will respond to. If somebody says, "Hey Mike, I saw you at the AESA conference. You mentioned that I should send you an email." Boom, here we go.
I compare some of these email messages. If you got past the subject heading, if you got past the friendly salutation when you don't know me, and you start getting into the meat of the email message, if it starts feeling like a colorful car ad that you're trying to sell me a car and you're going to throw in a free TV or a free cruise, or we've driven past these car dealerships, and I don't know what you call them, but they have the flailing arm blow-up towels. If I'm starting to feel that your email message has any kind of that flavor, take note, I'm deleting it. And I would advise anyone that's listening to this podcast, delete it as well. It's not only unprofessional, it's insulting.
I could not agree more. So, I don't know, I think that's we've hit that pretty hard. You got anything else for the good of the order about email that you think people need to know?
Well, we talked quite a bit about frequency and looking it up and maybe how to use it. I would just finish with some thoughts around, and we talked about private sector, the public sector. It just, tone. You got to keep a professional tone. It's hard to do, and I still see people writing sometimes with emotion and writing with length, and people are going to get turned off when you're writing with emotion, and it could be forwarded, and they're going to turn you off if you're writing with length. So targeted, specific email, memo-like, I completely agree with. Keep in mind salutations, I would say. The friendlier you can be, the better, and be on point. But nothing worse, I guess, as we started with, thinking that email is instantaneous messaging or instant messaging. That is a real misnomer, and I'm hoping that if anyone's taken anything from this podcast away today, it's the careful use of texting, the careful use of social media, and more specifically, the careful use of how to use email.
And don't let it become a source of embarrassment for you and the organization. Remember, you represent other people, you represent the organization. Don't let email become something that you have to explain.
You're paid to lead, you're paid to talk, you're paid to make decisions, you're not paid to do email. Email is one of the necessary evils. I don't know if we talked about this, but my assistant and I have been chatting, and there's some training put on by our statewide administrators association around relinquishing some of the power of email to your assistants, and I kind of compare that to, say you get snail mail still, and I don't know about you, but my snail mail has dipped off quite a bit and tapered off. And I would say if I'm receiving a dozen paper messages a day, that's a lot. But even then, my assistant's going through my paper messages, and I allow her to throw out garbage. And I'm wondering if all of us should consider turning over some of our email to our confidential assistants so that maybe they could parse out the junk mail. I know it's a little bone of contention around privacy for some people, but I am definitely looking in doing that with my assistant, since most of it's going digital, and my assistant is capable of maybe working with her together collaboratively to go through email to really cause less or fewer of the distractions that we discussed.
Yeah, and turn off your email alerts. There's no reason to have them on. Batch your email. One thing we didn't mention that I would put out there too, get serious about unsubscribing to things. And most of the newsletters and things, will have the unsubscribe link at the bottom. One trick is to, since we told you to use keyword searching, search for the word unsubscribe. And then that's going to pull up all the emails that have that in the bottom, and take the 30 seconds to click the link and unsubscribe, and prune all that stuff out of your inbox, and that'll help right there.
Yeah, I think points well taken. Separate personal and professional email. We really didn't talk a lot about personal email because that's really not the point of this podcast. But if you're the kind of person that is using school email or corporate email for personal business, 1999 wants its usage back.
Let's end there. Party like it's 1999. Thank you, Dr. Jeff Kimmer, for your third triumphant, or your second return, but your third appearance on the School Leadership Show. I don't know. What do you want to do next? You got any ideas for an upcoming one?
I just want to come back for the sparkling water.
Sparkling water is fantastic. So you can find Jeff on, how can people find you?
It's the Dr. JPC21 at Gmail.
Okay.
That's my personal email.
That's
Speaking
fine.
of email.
Good. What's your Twitter handle?
Oh, it's just Jeff Kimmer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not very exciting.
Yeah, you can tweet Jeff or you can tweet me. I'm at Dowdy Mike on Twitter. Love to hear from you with show ideas, feedback, anything. I'm a big boy with thick skin. I can handle the criticism. Help me make it better.
But if you send something with a flashy subject heading or more than a couple paragraphs, what do you think I'm going to do with it?
It's done.
Have you learned nothing, man?
All right. Thanks.
Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the School Leadership Show, a podcast for aspiring and practicing school leaders by school leaders. Send your comments, questions, and show ideas to mike@schoolleadershipshow.com. And now it's time to rate the podcast in iTunes and leave a comment. No, really, it's time to do it. So when you're done here, go right to iTunes, rate the podcast, leave a comment. Thanks.